How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? All right, before we get started with today's program, my partner in crime is going to be doing the introduction, but our video team of Stephen Garcia and Julio Torres, along with our Writers Festival team, have been working quite hard on a time-lapse video of what it takes to make the Writers Festival happen. So we spend, thanks to the City Council, they give us about 3 weeks to go through the process to safely take everything out of the building, then commission everything back in to make the festival happen, and then decommission everything and bring back the books. So we're actually moving just under 100,000 books in this process. So please sit back and enjoy our 3-minute video.
Well, you can see by that everyone's ever-ready bunny batteries were really working. So welcome. As always, please turn off your cell phones. Everyone look at their phone right now. I promise to give you time. Let's make sure they're all off. As always, thank you, everybody. I'm glad to hear you rustling through your purses, your pockets, because you always think it's off and then it never is. As always, the founder of our festival, the person that created everything. That's fine. Let him. The person that created everything. Sorry, I'm still seating people. Multitasking. The famous, and my best friend, Jamie Kabler. So as you all know, we are a city-sponsored event. The Writers Festival is all because of our city council, who is behind us 100%. I'd like to recognize them today. Mayor Ted Weil, Mayor Pro Tem Lynn Mulatto, Council members Eve Fromberg-Edelstein, and Council member Michael O'Keefe. And Steve Downs couldn't make it today, but his lovely wife Jerry's here instead. Thank you, Jerry. So I want to take a moment to recognize someone whose generosity is what brings us together today, and for all our Writers Series events, not just this one. He's a passionate devotee of literature, education, and the arts. His contributions not only enrich our cultural landscape, but also ensure that literature remains accessible and inspiring for all. And by the way, he's also the sponsor of the Hockney exhibit at the Palm Springs Art Museum. So that exhibit is still going on the rest of this month. So please help me thank the don't thank me, it's all him. Help me thank the incredible sponsor of our Writers Series event. He's in the house tonight, Jordan Schnitzer. Please take a bow. So, overcoming adversity requires resilience, determination, and the courage to push forward despite life's challenges. This year, the Rancho Mirage Writers Festival, in conjunction with the Western Wind Foundation, jointly sponsored an essay contest amongst 7th graders from all the Palm Springs Unified School District schools. We invited young writers to share their stories of overcoming adversity, whether it was real or imagined. With over 300 entries submitted, 2 winners were selected from each of the schools because of their exceptional storytelling and inspiring message. Today, we're honored to recognize one of those outstanding winners, whose words remind us all that the strength found in facing challenges head-on is so important. So please welcome from Raymond Cree Middle School, one of this year's Distinguished Essay Contest winners, Gershan Singh.
Last year, I created an essay.
I want everyone to hear you. Okay. Right there.
It's called Harmonious Journeys, a 6th grader's musical odyssey. As I reflect on my beginning year of band, I am transported to a time of great nostalgia, anticipation, and excitement. I had always been intrigued by the idea of playing a musical instrument, and during the beginning of 6th grade, this dream became a reality. Even though I was excited, I did not expect this path to be long, frustrating, and tedious. However, it didn't take me long to realize that this dream would be a difficult one. Learning an instrument was much harder than I anticipated. Despite my initial assumption that it would be easy, it proved to be challenging and a frustrating experience. The instrument I chose is notoriously difficult to master. It's called the French horn. I'd found myself struggling to produce a single note, nonetheless a harmony. This made me frustrated and discouraged, and it felt overwhelming. I began to question my decision to join band, and I wondered if I had what it took to succeed. But then my compassionate and enthusiastic band director recognized the potential inside of me and saw something inside of me that no one else had. He encouraged me not to give up and provided me with invaluable advice and techniques to help me improve my tone. Under his unwavering guidance, and support, I devoted countless hours to the practice of the horn, experimenting with different mouth exercises and articulation techniques. Throughout this training, I learned to control my breath and improve my tone by relying on the 5 points of success, which are critical points near the mouth that allow you to control your tone. It was a long and grueling journey, but eventually I discovered the embouchure technique, which involved me making an M shape with my mouth. That was a pivotal moment for me, and I felt a surge of excitement and progress that I was making. I continued to practice diligently day after day, and eventually I began to see progress. As I honed my skills and through practice and dedication, I began to discover the real beauty of playing the French horn. Each note I played on the instrument resonated with a unique and rich sound that I found captivating. which each passing day I felt a growing sense of pride and satisfaction in my ability to coax such a beautiful sound from the instrument. The French horn had become more than just an instrument to me. It had become a medium through which I could express myself. Looking back, I realized that this experience taught me a valuable life lesson. It showed me that anything is possible if you put enough effort into it. No matter how hard the journey is, just don't give up. Through band, I also learned the importance of teamwork and collaboration. Playing in an ensemble requires a great deal of communication and coordination. I learned how to work with others to create something beautiful and harmonious. I developed a sense of belonging with my fellow band members, and we shared a common goal of creating music together. Band also provided me with a sense of purpose and belonging. It gave me a sense of identity and helped me develop a love for music that will stay with me throughout my entire life as it has changed me for the better. In conclusion, I am grateful for the opportunity to have been able to master the horn. It was a challenging yet rewarding journey with lots of twists and turns. But throughout all, the reward is something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. As the band wasn't just a musical group, it was a family. Thank you.
So there's just a sample of what the future writers of our country can achieve, even at a young age. So, on to today's program. As always, after the event, if you'll line up on this wall, Maureen will be over here signing books, and everyone will just feed through right to Maureen and get to take a picture and have her sign your book. So Maureen is a Pulitzer Prize winning New York Times columnist, known for her sharp wit, her incisive political analysis, and fearless critiques of those in power. With a career spanning decades, Dowd has become one of the most recognizable voices in American journalism, blending humor, cultural insight, and political scrutiny into her signature style. Beyond her columns, Dowd has been a dynamic presence at our Rancho Mirage Writers Festival, where she has conducted thought-provoking interviews with major cultural and political figures. Her past festival interviews have included conversations with Tom Hanks, David Duchovny, former Governor Jerry Brown, Donna Brazile, Bret Stephens, and numerous political panels. Her ability to challenge, engage, and entertain audiences has made her a standout at the festival, reinforcing her reputation as a bold and insightful commentator. And today, she's going to be in the hot seat, because with her will be Dave Karger, a film historian, entertainment journalist, and the host of Turner Classic Movies. Before joining TCM, he was a longtime correspondent for Entertainment Weekly and has appeared as an Oscar expert on NBC's Today Show. He's also the author of the book 50 Oscar Nights, one of our favorite moderators at the festival. Please help me welcome Dave Karger and Maureen Dowd.
Deb, that was lovely. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for having us here. Maureen, welcome back to the desert.
Thank you, Dave.
We're so happy that you're here.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel a kinship with you, Maureen, because for the greater part of the last 30 years, I've spent my life interviewing people, being interviewed by people, and you do that as part of your career, and you're one of the best to ever do it. So to sit with you is a real thrill. So thank you for being here.
Well, as I told you, basically my whole life is based on Turner Classic Movies. The way I decorated my house, my clothes. I tried to really dress it up today for Dave. And when I first got into journalism, it was mostly men, and they were pretty bossy, and I tried to study film noir vixens, not for the sexy part, but for the part where they could talk back to any man and not get intimidated. So I based everything on that too. You know, they would always come in and have some snappy line like, "Quite the hacienda." So
Are you a Barbara Stanwyck fan? She's a favorite of most of the people.
Yeah, she was my dad's favorite actress, and I love Barbara Stanwyck.
So in general, which side of the table do you prefer to be on? Being interviewed or doing the interviewing?
Oh my God, doing the interviewing. The reason I wanted to do these pieces is because when you have a column, it's just your voice. When I started the column, Tom Friedman and Anna Quinlan were friends of mine, and they said, you're not going to have room to quote anyone. It's only 800 words. It's just your voice. And I don't want to just hear myself talk. I want to hear other people talk. I'm never happier than when I don't have to talk at all.
Oops, sorry. No.
Sorry. Not sorry.
So you're referring to your new book, Notorious, which many of you have in your hands, and obviously those of you who don't, you can buy it. It's great. It's a collection of terrific interviews that you've done over the years for places like the New York Times, GQ, Vanity Fair, with movie stars, with fashion designers, with moguls, icons of so many different sorts. But yeah, let me ask you more about that, because when did you realize you needed to mix it up, mix your writing up from just the columns to be able to have your sanity and hear from other people?
Yeah, I mean, I said having a column of 800 words, I always felt like I was trying to wriggle into a dress 2 sizes too small. I love words, and I wanted the words to be able to run. And I had a friend who was an editor at the Times, and she said, what if we split your job into 1 column a week instead of 2, and then you could write for the style section. And this was kind of based on the Financial Times on Saturdays has a wonderful at lunch feature where it's a profile. And they do a thing on the side where they say what the person is eating and drinking and how much it costs. And I wanted a little thing on the side. So I happened to be watching Turner Classic Movies, which I never turn off. And there was a Don Amici movie called Confirm or Deny. So I thought, well, that would be fun. It isn't like Truth or Dare. It isn't embarrassing or rude in any way. It's just a little dada and a chance for someone to show some humor and charm.
It's fascinating to see how people rise to the occasion of the
Yes.
confirm or deny or don't.
Well, I give them a second chance.
Oh, you do?
because it's just meant to be fun. The one person who really could not get into it in any way was Denzel Washington. I said to him, it's just meant to be this fun, dada thing. It's just like silly. And he gave me that Denzel look from Training Day. And he goes, if it's silly, why do you do it? And I said, oh, it just brings out the charm and the fun. And he was just glaring at me. And finally, I hit on the idea of asking him his favorite ice cream. And his whole face lit up. And it's like butter crunch maple or something. So that got me off the hook.
So for this book, I will imagine that you went back and reread some of your work that maybe you hadn't read in a while. Because some of these pieces are 30 years old.
Right. Well, writers, when you reread your old work, you always think you were a much better writer before. I remember Paul Newman told me the reverse. He said he got embarrassed by his early work, the work we fell in love with him on, Hud and Harper, and he thought he was overdoing it, and he felt he was distilling and simplifying as he got older as an actor. But I just always feel like... when I look back at that Paul Newman piece, I was really proud of how well it was written.
I love that. Were there some that you went back and read and thought before you read them that you would put them in the book, and then you read them and thought, I'm not going to put them in?
It was really hard. If you guys buy this, I can immediately do volume 2 and volume 3. Because
Nice.
I have interviewed so many amazing people that didn't get in the book, like Boz Luhrmann on Elvis, and so many fun people that Christine Baranski, I love her. I'm trying to think of some of the others. Jessica Lange. I mean,
Oh, wow.
I just have another volume waiting to go, so.
How about the decision to not have any politicians in the book? Because you certainly could have.
Well, I thought it would be a good diversion because we all get so, as Bill Maher said, you know, he wasn't going to let Trump get inside his head this time and drive him crazy with everything he said. But Trump has ratcheted it up so much that it's hard not to, you know, Trump is a feral genius. He's an attention addict. So if he's not getting your attention, he is going to do something wild to get it. And now he is doing so many wild things. So it's very hard to look away. I was thinking it would be a good divertissement away from Trump, but it is, I admit, hard to look away. But here's the thing. He's an offstage character in a lot of these pieces that were done during his first term. And people like Larry David and a lot of people wanted to, Jane Fonda, wanted to discuss Trump. So he's a character in the book. And there are also profiles of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. So the profile of Elon Musk isn't really of him, it's of AI,
Right.
but the interview is with him.
Right. Would you say, because people would always ask me when I was a magazine journalist, oh, the people that you interview, is it because it was assigned to you or did you pitch it? And when I was at Entertainment Weekly, it was really half and half, I would say. How about you? Are you actively pitching, I want to interview this person at this moment, or do the publications come to you and say, we've booked this person, you're going to do it?
Well, you know, some people, when they describe my column, they use the word acidic. There was one editor who suggested I call my column stiletto, so that was like a little. But, you know, I've been through a lot of impeachments and wars with these guys in the White House, and a lot of times I tend to be writing, you know, critically, and that gets exhausting after a couple decades. So I really wanted to look around and say, who do I admire for their talent or leadership, or who seems like kind of a cool person? And so in the main, with one exception, or two or three, these are portraits. They're much warmer portraits of someone that I want you to get to know. You know, it's not, but that makes getting the interviews super hard because people look at my column and they think they're going to go under that kind of grilling. And I'm like, no, that's my day job. But I was interviewing Barry Diller, and he is like the fiercest guy in Hollywood, I think. And right in the middle, he goes, I have to stop, and he starts smoking. I didn't even know he smoked, and he goes, I'm so nervous. I'm like, I made Barry Diller nervous, you know, so.
Sometimes your name, I think one's name can carry a weight that you don't realize. Even for me, as an entertainment journalist, I remember once I was interviewing Laura Flynn Boyle. And I think I was 27 at the time. I'd written a couple cover stories for Entertainment Weekly, and I did my interview with her, and she left the room, and I walked out into the hallway of the elevator. She didn't realize I was right there, and she was with her team or whatever, and she got in the elevator, and she went, "That was Dave Karger?"
Right.
And I don't think she meant it like in a mean way, but she was like, I didn't expect like a human being. I don't know what it was.
Well, one time, a while back, I met Lauren Bacall, and she goes to me, wow, you're such a cute little thing. She said, for someone so mean. I was just like, oh, damn, Lauren Bacall thinks I'm mean.
So have you had that experience where you finish an interview with someone and they'll say something like, wow, that is not what I expected?
Well, these interviews are a little, I won't say proctology, or a shrink, but they last a minimum of an hour and a half. I did one recently with George Clooney that went on for 5 hours. It literally turned from day to night.
Wow.
And I just want to learn as much about them as I can to give you a full picture of what it would be like if you guys spent time with them.
That's why they're so fascinating. people ask me why I like my job, why I like interviewing, and it really comes down to I'm pretty nosy. I'm just like a nosy person, and I always have been. Have you been that way?
No, it isn't that no, I'm not nosy, but I had an older brother who's not with us anymore, and when I was little, he took me to AFI, which was in what we now refer to as Trump Kennedy Center. And he took me to old movies, and we saw Shane, and we saw An American in Paris. I remember he would even sometimes take me on dates. He took me on a date he had to see Showboat, and I got obsessed with old movies. And so if you want to meet the people that you've grown up with who are in classic movies, the only way to do it is suck it up and ask for an interview.
I'd be curious to know which of these two aspects of your upbringing do you think more affects your mindset and just the way you are? Is it because you were raised Catholic or because you're the baby of your family?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I wish my sister is here. I wish she could answer this question. I don't know. I feel like it's an amalgam of, a bunch of things. When I was little, that same brother took me to see Hamlet. And I immediately thought I was 13. I thought Hamlet was my boyfriend. And as you guys know, Hamlet is the worst boyfriend in literary history. So that explains a lot about me and why I'm single.
It's interesting. This is a question that I think maybe the answer depends more on the person that you're interviewing. But I'd be curious to know if you have a similar mindset going into each interview you do or a different one. Because sometimes it can feel collegial, I think, if you're doing an interview. Sometimes it can feel more adversarial. I think by and large that does depend on the other person.
Yeah.
How do you approach it? Do you approach every interview in a similar way, or is it different based on your experience or your thoughts about the person?
I approach it in a similar way, but pretty soon into it you realize either someone is very much like the person you see on screen, or they're partly like the person, or they're not at all like the person. Like Al Pacino, played these fierce characters. And in person, he was very poetic and soulful and gentle and, vulnerable. And it was sort of shocking. Now, Larry David is half like he is. He is half that guy. And we went to this restaurant in LA, the San Vicente Bungalows, and a drink came. He had ordered a drink, and it had a piece of celery in it. And so you could see him agitating about the piece of celery. He just didn't like it in his drink. And he's agitating and agitating. Finally, he looks around and throws it in a planter when he thinks no one is looking. And he's that guy. But he is also, his daughter told me he tolerates no whining. His whole show is him whining. And at home, he tolerates no whining, and he will say to his daughter, stop whining. And, when I was your age, I was in the Army Reserves and selling magazines in the subway, and you have it really good, and stop whining. And she also said she and her sister, he would get really upset if they fought. When they were little, he doesn't like any fighting. So, he is like that guy, but he isn't. And I was trying to think, and then you meet someone like, Christine Baranski, who's exactly the same, super cool.
Well, and then there's the whole...
and Denzel,
Well.
He's super guarded, which might not surprise you, I guess, but much more guarded, very, very, very hard to interview. Afterwards, his wife called me and said that was the best interview Denzel has ever done. And I thought it was the worst, so you never know.
There's always the question, and we talked about this a little bit when we were just having lunch, are these people turning it on for us, right? I mean, a lot of times you interview an actor or an actress, well, these are people who are professionals at acting a certain way.
Yeah.
Are they acting
They're
like
professionals
a good
at lying.
Right.
Well, this is so funny because I met George Clooney in Washington 20 years or something, he was doing a TV show that involved lobbying or politics, and he got a bunch of reporters together to kind of pick their brain. And,
K Street, right?
yeah, and everyone kept telling me how charming he was. And so, after lunch, people would ask me, and I go, I don't know. He was acting charming. He's acting like Clark Gable, but I don't know. So I kept thinking that for 20 years. And then when I did this recent interview with him and we spent 5 hours together, I just walked out saying, Maureen, you are such a nitwit. That's not acting charming. That's charm. And I meet very few people nowadays with charm, and you have to work hard to have charm. And so I was pretty blown away. He is genuinely charming.
He is. I'd be curious to know how actively you're adjudicating the interview, because someone asked me back in the day, I just saw your cover story. It was on Denzel Washington. Whoa, were you just sitting there for 2 hours sitting wow, I'm sitting across the table from Denzel Washington? I said, no. I was thinking, this is a guy I'm interviewing, and I have to make sure the quotes that he's giving me are good enough to run in the magazine. How do you deal with that when you're actually in the moment of doing an interview to make sure that it's going well enough to be good and usable later?
Well, that came up with Denzel Washington again, because I was asking a lot of questions. I wanted the sexy, exciting Denzel, and he was in a very spiritual mood, and he was talking about spirituality and religion, and it's hard because you don't know whether to let someone talk about the thing that they want to talk about, or I was thinking, this isn't going well. I need to have something more exciting. But then it turned out that really is the direction his life has gone in, because when Will Smith got up and slapped Chris Rock, Denzel took him aside after and was kind of mentoring him that night. And then I think he's become a minister of some sort lately. And so when I look back at it in retrospect, this was the stuff that was going through his mind, and that was important to him. So you're right, it's a tension.
In a general sense, have you found it a different experience interviewing actors versus fashion people versus tech people?
Yeah, I am not a high fashion person. The reason I like to read about fashion is because it's just some crazy other world. But I did really enjoy my interviews with fashionistas, fashion savants like Andre Leontali, because he's what I would say is, I don't read Dave Franzen books or a lot of books because I don't really care to read about, you have a situation where siblings are squabbling and somebody gets a headache and they go to the CVS. I don't care about any of that. I want Shakespeare, larger than life, operatic. I want operatic characters. And Andre Leontali is certainly operatic. Tom Ford in his own way, although he's not operatic, but he is a super fascinating, different kind of person. He is, he in his house in London, he has a garden of only black flowers. And his house in Santa Fe, he put color on the walls at one point, and then he realized he couldn't stand any color, and he had to paint everything white. He has an aesthetic sensibility that is so finely tuned that he can never really be happy with any environment, because he'll look around and he'll find some little thing that's out of sync. And for instance, with designers, I never know if I should wear something that they designed or if that's sucking up. But in Tom Ford's case, I splurged and got a Tom Ford red chiffon dress and had a big velvet belt. And I did the interview. I thought it went okay, and I'm on the plane back to New York the next day, and I pick up page 6, and Priyanka Chopra is in this dress. And I suddenly realize I had the belt on backwards. And then I had to just ride the plane all the way back to New York. So when I got back, I called him and I said, Mr. Ford, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but did you notice I had the belt on backwards of your dress? And there's this long, really pained pause. And he's like, yes. So I'm sure the whole interview he wanted to leap across the table and flip the belt around, because if you guys have seen the movie The Red Shoes, it's very much like that. He literally can't even enjoy what he's creating because he's always thinking of some way. When I came into the interview room at a beautiful hotel in LA, the San Vicente Bungalows, he was in the interview room an hour early to rearrange it. A hotel room. He was changing where the potted palm went. He was, redoing it. And then afterwards, he bought the room so he could make it exactly. He wanted to put brown velvet curtains and, he's just driven by. So I always wanted to have super good taste, which I do not. But when I see how painful that was to him, where he just isn't able to relax,
Your Tom Ford story in the book is one of my favorite chapters in the book.
He was one of my favorite people to meet because I was so intimidated. He was in those ads with naked models and stuff. And I was so intimidated to meet him. And he turns out to be this super sweet, well-mannered Texan who is just completely modest and fun to hang out with. Of all the people, I would have thought Tom Ford would be scarier.
It's not what I expected. I actually just interviewed him 2 weeks ago over Zoom for my next book, which I've just begun. And we get on the Zoom, and my computer laptop is set up where behind my face is our bar in our house. And he said, "Oh, hey, Dave, great to see you. There's not enough whiskey in that bottle of Jack Daniels behind you."
See what I mean? Yeah.
I was like, you can't do anything right with these people. You mentioned the Elon Musk, that he's part of an AI story, but you and your editors very smartly, at least for the book, headlined it with Elon Musk's name. Of course, it was fascinating to me to see that this piece that you had written in 2017, and you mentioned how Elon Musk had met with the president-elect. It's just fascinating to
But he didn't like him then.
Right.
He was anti-Trump then. But there's a piece about Peter Thiel in the book, and Peter Thiel amazingly predicts that Elon Musk and Trump will start to like each other. He said, because you can't have two grandmaster, salesmen and marketers and larger-than-life people. Everyone in Washington thought these two supernovas would collide and they would break up very soon. But I never thought so, because they each know exactly what they want from the relationship and they're getting it. So I think they're going to hang in there for a while with this.
With any of the stories in this book, or just in general that you can think of, do you ever get feedback from the interview subject? I rarely feel like I did when I was at EW. You wouldn't really often hear from the person.
No, I don't really get feedback that often. But I did want to tell one more Peter Thiel, Thiel essay story, because it's so insightful about Musk. He said they founded PayPal together. And there was some weekly poker game, and Elon got in the poker game and he bet everything he had on every hand. And afterwards, Peter Thiel said to him, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "Well, I don't know how to play poker." Which I think you can, if you look at him in Washington now. And the other thing was, Peter Thiel said, Elon came to him and said, "I just bought a new McLaren sports car. Do you want to ride?" And they got in. They didn't have on seatbelts. And Elon's going really fast and flips the car. It makes a 360-degree turn. And somehow they were both alive afterwards. And I think you can see that in Washington, too.
I think a lot of people have been struggling with this idea, this urge to just become an ostrich and stick your head in the sand. And I wonder, for all the people that I know who do a nightly show on MSNBC or CNN or even Fox News, or people like you, is it ever just all too much?
Well, that's why I wanted to work on this, because I thought I could like distance a little from, being so obsessively focused on Trump all the time, but he doesn't let you, you know? It's like The Godfather. I thought I was out, and he pulls you back in.
Do you have any pet peeves of interviewing? Like if you're watching someone else do an interview, I have a couple. Like I hate when someone's interviewing someone and they say, talk about your childhood. Talk about why you decided to do that. It's like this phrase that I think has crept into interviewing. Talk about. I hate that. And I hate when people say, if they're talking to an actor, what drew you to this project? Because the answer is, I needed a job most of the time. Are there things that you hear people do or that you used to do that you don't do anymore?
No, I'm a terrible interviewer. That's why I want so much time with someone to kind of stumble around and get stuff. But, I don't think, in retrospect, I don't think I ask enough about parents because when it comes down to it, a lot of these people are totally shaped by their parents, and you've got to add some extra time for that because it's not always, easy to get that out of someone. But
there's a bit of a charming haplessness to some of the stories in here on your part, right? I mean, the story of the belt with the dress. There's a story, I think it's Ray Fiennes, where you realize that you've shown up to the wrong...
I showed up at the wrong restaurant. I was 45 minutes late for an hour interview with Ray Fiennes. And, again, he's giving me that Voldemort look. Yeah.
But where does that come from? Were you just, always a little bit scattered? Or
Yeah.
Yes.
And when you're young, that can be charming. But the older you get, it is not.
Honestly, though, I think it's disarming. As long as you have someone who is okay waiting that 45 minutes, because I think a lot of times the reputation precedes you, right? With your name in the column and your name with all these, so
well, if Ray Fiennes were not such a gentleman, I wouldn't have had any interview because he let me redo it the next morning. But that wouldn't always be possible, so I've got to try and get it together.
One of the many joys of the book, besides the really interesting and revealing things that you get out of your interview subjects, is just your writing. Your writing is a joy to read.
Thank
your
you.
turns of phrase, they're just so, it's interesting, it's clever, it's fresh. What's your process like? Do you kind of vomit it all out and then go back and change phrases, or are you really poring over each word, phrase, sentence as you're creating it?
Yeah, I don't think I'm a great writer. I think I've learned how to be a good newspaper writer, which is a different thing. But I do try really hard on the writing. That matters a lot to me. And, I get scared and frozen, and I don't start right away. And when I worked in New York on the column, and it would be kind of 7:30 at night, I would have a blank screen, and I would hear when we still had delivery trucks, that's back in the day, I would hear them starting, and they would be downstairs waiting to get the newspaper, and I wouldn't have even have started. So I kind of have to have fear and adrenaline kick in before I can actually put words on the page.
What is your feeling on conducting a print interview versus a live interview? Because I've seen you here at this Writers' Festival interviewing David Duchovny, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
How do you approach, if at all differently, those two types of interviews?
Well, again, if someone else is talking, I'm so happy. Like, I'm not nervous. I'm nervous now because I'm talking, but if it were vice versa, I wouldn't be nervous. I can ask people questions because I'm curious about them, but, it's just hard to remember exactly everything you want to say at
You're doing
the same
just fine.
time. Okay.
Aren't you? But specifically the David Duchovny interview, which I was watching here, I was just like, holy cow, she is going there with everything, with
Oh
sex
my God,
addiction.
I did.
Yeah.
Afterwards, he said to me, how could you do that? But But then I realized I think he kind of likes that reputation.
So
He does.
So did you have it in your mind, like, I'm definitely going to go there with all those topics, or were you kind of like, let me see how it's going, and then have this in my
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, I always want to go there, but I save it for the end, and then I either spit it out or I don't, depending on how intimidated I am. Yeah, but Dave Duchovny isn't that intimidating. He's another one who's super charming. In fact, he is why I went to graduate school, partly because, when I interviewed him, he got his graduate degree and then he was going for his doctorate at Yale. And I always thought, wow, that would be cool to have a graduate degree. So it was always in the back of my mind. So I told him when I saw him here, you inspired that, because I just thought, wow, if you could have a degree in English literature and advance one, that would be really cool. So I went back. I just finished about a year ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I remember you talking to him about that. But that's one thing that I like about your interviewing style, is that I never see or hear you apologizing for a question that you're asking or qualifying it. You just get right in there and ask it. And I think that's a pitfall. A pitfall of some people is that you can almost hear them second-guessing or apologizing for their own questions.
Well, I think, the reader or the listener, if they're waiting for something, they can't really enjoy the interview if you skip the part that they're waiting to hear or read. So I think it's always better to address it so they can fully enjoy themselves.
We're in this day and age of everyone being able to say how they feel back at you, right?
Right.
Are you someone who reads the comments? Are you someone who reads the rebuttals to your columns, to your pieces, or once you've written something, it's out and you don't want to hear it?
I have never read one rebuttal or anything else because I am terrified to see what people are saying. I mean, when social media first started, I tried to get on there and see what people were saying, but I found it so debilitating. It really took everything out of me. When I was little, this is funny. I always get this movie wrong, but there was a movie with Irene Dunn and Cary Grant. I think it wasn't Pennies from Heaven, was it? Where the little
Penny
girl...
Serenade?
Yes,
Right.
Penny Serenade, sorry.
I love that movie so much.
And they adopted a little girl after much effort, and she was in a Christmas pageant, right, and fell off a beam and died. And, right, doesn't she?
Yes,
yeah.
she does.
And I got so traumatized by that movie because I always thought I transmuted it in my head that if you were criticized, you would die, that it would be like leukemia or something. And I was so sensitive to criticism from the time I was small. And so my family fell off their bed laughing when I got in a job where it's like being in The Godfather. I take one of theirs, they take one of mine, we go to the mattresses, and where I have to face criticism, including, President Trump always tweets that I'm crazy, and other presidents have criticized me. So I am facing criticism at the highest level when I can't take any criticism at all whatsoever. So I guess when presidents do it, I have to hear about it, but I don't want to hear about it from strangers on the internet.
Good for you. How have you seen things change? I guess I'm talking more about this side of your writing with social media, because back in my day, when I started in the mid-1990s at Entertainment Weekly, before Twitter, magazine journalism, celebrity profiles was how people learned about the stars that they liked.
Yeah.
So we were the only game in town. Right. How have you found it as the decades have gone by and a lot of these stars that you're interviewing are putting their own messages out 99% of the time, and you're only with them 1% of the time?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating with what we do because I always think of social media as being like the French Revolution. So I was kind of like Marie Antoinette, it was like everyone was giving their opinion, so why do we need an opinion columnist? But I also think it was that way as far as stars, because everybody, when they got the technology to be the star of their own life, like TikTok and Instagram, what did they care about Hollywood stars? They were the star of this life. And, I don't object to that. I think that's fun to be the star of your own life. But it does raise the bar on who's a star. Because if we're all stars, who are the real stars? So, it was hard to pick for this because of that. So I wanted to pick the really incandescent ones.
It's funny, I'm looking at the questions that I had for you, and I realized that this one question that I wrote down, which is very simple, the question I wrote was, do we have a future? And when I wrote that in my little notes, what I meant was, do people like you and I with our, celebrity journalism parts of our jobs, do we have a future? I'm realizing now that's a pretty large question. Maureen, do we have a future? Because, every day I'm kind of wondering that. So I'd like you to tackle that question in the small answer and the big answer.
Yeah, well, it was alarming to me. I've been trying to get a newspaper at every hotel and airport I've been on tour, and it doesn't exist, but the Times does seem to be doing well. But in a larger sense, the Elon essay in this book, the reason I went out to talk to him was because I was obsessed with killer robots, although they're not really robots, it would be killer AI. And Elon was worried that there was no kill switch as we go along with AI, but the rest of Silicon Valley, all his friends, didn't care. They are ready to have AI overlords. And so when Elon and Sam Altman, who are now feuding and legally entangled, started OpenAI, the whole purpose of it was to be on the side of carbon-based beings, humanity, and to protect it for us. And that's why Elon wanted to go to Mars, because he wanted someplace to escape, and he wanted to die on Mars, just not on impact. So I am a huge pessimist about, this was another thing Elon didn't realize. He told Demis Hassabis, this other AI genius who's in charge of Google's AI, that he was going to Mars to escape, killer AI. And Demis said, Elon, AI can follow you to Mars. Like he wasn't realizing. But I think, the fact that we haven't regulated, or the people in Silicon Valley don't care at all about kill switches, or, basically we're just ants in their experiments now. They're waiting to merge with their AI overlord. Steve Wozniak, the famous Steve Jobs partner, told me that he's feeding his family pets. He's feeding his dogs filet mignon and stuff, because that's what we're going to be. We're going to be the family pets to AI. So in general, we don't have a future.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah. I was just hoping
we have a future as pets.
Right, yeah. Let me end with two things. I did read that now that Trump has taken over the Kennedy Center and he's installing his board, I think he put Maria Bartiromo on there, and maybe even Laura Ingraham.
He put Laura Ingraham.
So assuming he obviously wants to fill it out with different voices from all sides, because of course that's what he wants to do, would you like to throw your hat into the ring as a DC person with cultural interest and influence to be on the Kennedy Center board with Maria and Laura?
No. I don't know. They seem to be planning a Christmas concert of the J6 choir, the people who were imprisoned, for attacking the Capitol. My dad, our family business was the Capitol. My dad was the police inspector in charge of Senate security for 20 years. And he would have been one of the ones under attack that day. So it's hard for me to turn around and act like those people were tourists and patriots.
Let me ask you this as a last thing, and I really enjoy talking to you because I like your self-deprecation, but I'm hoping you can look past it for this last question. I'd love to know in your mind what you attribute your success to. Is it luck? Is it placed at the right time? Or what skills and talents of your own and perseverance of your own and personality traits of your own would you say have been most important?
Well, I'm a Capricorn, so I'm a goat. So we slowly climb up the mountain. And it took me a long time to get to each different stage of journalism. It was all the hard way. There was no nepotism or Ivy League credentials. So I would just say, it's like Maggie the cat. The talent of staying on the hot tin roof is just sticking it out.
I'm glad you did. The book is fascinating. I congratulate you on it, and it's so nice to sit and talk
Thank
to
you, guys. Thanks,
Maureen
Kate.
Dowd, everyone.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,